Hello, everyone. Welcome to AgriSafe's interview series celebrating International Year of the Woman Farmer. I'm Dr. Tara Haskins, and I'm the Total Farmer Health Director at AgriSafe Network. Today, I am joined by Lindy Savelle. Is that correct, Lindy? Lindy Savelle?
It's awesome. You got it right.
I practiced it. And she has joined us today to talk about health and safety and women farmers. Lindy, I'm going to have you tell about yourself, but I remember meeting you in Fort Valley, Georgia, seeing you on the stage representing women with a bunch of other producers. And so when we came up with this idea for the series, you were one of the first people that popped up into my mind.
Oh, awesome. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so let's just start out by sharing a little bit about yourself and your background with agriculture.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tara, for having me. This is wonderful to be able to speak not only about our farm, but just about, health and mental well-being. But yeah, so I grew up actually on a tobacco farm. And yeah, and so then I said, no way am I doing this. No way. I'm not farming. I'm not having any part of doing this. And so I ultimately spent over a span of 34 years in federal law enforcement and retired. And my husband and I are like, now what do we do? So we had these two small farms in South Georgia. So we said, let's go back to the farm, go back to our roots. We happened to grow up not knowing each other, but we were one county apart. And so that's exactly what we did. We came back to the farm where he was born and raised. And we live here. We took the farmhouse that his parents had and transformed it into our home. And this is where we live now. And we are neck deep in citrus farming. We have a citrus grove as well as a citrus nursery. It's a USDA certified citrus nursery, which notches it up a couple of levels of requirements, but we ship trees all over the United States. So we are not retired. We are quite busy.
Wow. What a story that you're doing this later in life, second career almost.
It is. That's what people say. So why didn't you just retire? And I told my husband when I retired, I said, well, I'm not quite done yet. I don't know exactly what, but we started looking for something to do on the farm or with the farm rather. And I had such an enormous, I'm so grateful for my law enforcement career. I just grew up in a very small town without, a stoplight out in the country to go and see and be able to do some of the things in my career that I did. I just felt very compelled to come back and do something to give back. So we just kept looking and trying to figure out what that might be. And we looked at a lot of different things, but citrus was the one thing that you can do on a small farm, small scale, that doesn't require a lot of capital input. And so we jumped out there and planted a grove, and then we got involved in the nursery business. And then I've been serving on this Georgia Citrus Association since it was formed in 2016. So it's just an unbelievable what's going on in Georgia with citrus. It's just a commodity that continues to grow each year. So I'm just fortunate.
I was really struck by your story, especially when I was in Fort Valley, because most people, when you talk about Georgia, what comes to mind is peaches, right? I would have never have thought citrus. And so that had to be sort of, you had to be sort of on the kind of a renegade almost of stepping off into this commodity, huh?
We did. I don't know if you've heard me say at Fort Valley, but people kind of scoffed at us and said, you can't grow citrus in Georgia. You just can't do it. People from California said we couldn't grow certain types here, and we have. And so we, we've kind of pioneered this industry together. Not we, me and my husband, but we, the growers that have come together, are kind of cutting a path here, with even things like putting together regulations to regulate the industry in Georgia. We continue to do that. Putting together a commodity commission, those things they take time and they take energy, and so far the Lord's blessed me with plenty of energy. So, but you're right. I mean, we had to have some tough shells because, there's a lot of people in Florida who've moved up to Georgia because of the expansion of housing in Florida. It's just, if you want space, they're coming to Georgia. So, and California people. We have two friends that moved here from California. And so, for people to say, oh, you can't do that, you got to kind of harden up and hunker down and just say, okay, and we'll see.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we've done.
Well, you mentioned you have the nursery business and you also have the grow. So not even putting those necessarily in two categories, but what of what you do in agriculture is probably the most rewarding part about the work that you do?
Well, this afternoon, at the end of the day, I'm actually going to meet with a couple who is thinking about putting in some citrus. And so they call me and they say, well, we'd like to meet, we want to meet with an expert. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you. Perry and I are not the experts on what to do. We're the experts on what not to do. So I'll be happy to come and share that with you. Because there are certain things that you have to do when you're thinking about planting a grove. And so to me, that is the most rewarding part of helping people who are interested in it, who don't know about it, to take the time to be with them. When we first started, it was hard to find people who were willing to open up and tell us, about it. So we had to do a lot of, asking people if we could come look at their grove or, sit down and talk to them. I mean, everybody's busy. So I would say that is the most rewarding part of getting to run this nursery. Is, and then working with our employees and seeing the ideas that they come up with on our farm. The nursery side is totally different than the farm side. So
I can only imagine. Yeah. But it sounds like your service hat that you wore, even as a law enforcement, that is the most rewarding part of your job now as a producer.
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right. I never really thought about it till I was actually interviewed yesterday too, and someone asked me that very question, what's the most rewarding part? And I said, I have to say that it's with others. It's being with others and helping them grow or helping them understand what they're about to take on. And I think, I'm in a unique position because I've had my career and I'm not ashamed to tell you the mistakes we made so that maybe you'll use caution and not make those same mistakes. And, that's hard to do. People, people don't want to tell you what they did wrong. They want to tell you, what they did right, but I'm happy to do that. And it's really helped me to be, just to be, out there with people and honest with them. So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to flip that question just a little bit. So can you tell me what is the most challenging part of what you do now?
Oh, goodness, yes. The most challenging. Well, I mean, obviously you can't control weather and things like that. So as far as the things that I can challenge, just working, trying to keep our inventory. I'm going to separate it from nursery and farm because it's two totally different things. But challenging is just balancing it all, trying to make sure I have enough inventory, available for the customers and what they want, and people are now wanting to grow different types of trees and put in different kind of rootstock. So we graft citrus trees onto a cold hardy rootstock here for Georgia.
Okay. Okay.
So just keeping up with that, how many do we need of this variety and what rootstock, and just trying to keep up with the industry as it grows and expands. And we have actually pivoted our farm operation. So we have the nursery where we grow trees and the farm where we grow fruit. And we grow some other things too, but as far as citrus, my citrus hat, so on the fruit side, we quickly realized when we first started, we were one of the bigger growers with 5 acres, 1,000 trees. People thought we were
just 5 acres, just 5 acres. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we had a couple at another farm, but we eventually took out those trees, and I'll tell you why. So we planted all one variety, which is what you would think. You don't plant, when you plant cotton or something else, you don't put 5 different varieties out there in the field. So we planted one variety, and we were a large grower. Well, that was, 2015, 16. Here we are 10 years later, and we're one of the smallest growers. The industry, you've got people putting in hundreds of acres of citrus now, which is what you need to make the industry be an industry, instead of, hobby farming. And so we realized about 3 years ago that we were going to have to come up with something unique on our farm to make it where we could compete. Because for labor cost, it's hard to get labor to come in and harvest just 5 acres when they could go to, Mr. Smith down the road who's got 100 acres and harvest his.
Work longer, make more money. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just realized, okay, we've got to think of something different. And so we pivoted our whole operation to agritourism, which means, taking that now, instead of us taking the fruit elsewhere, we're going to try to bring people to us. And that was just a total 180. You first got to accept the fact that people are going to be on your farm. And then secondly, you've got to, liability wise and all of that, you've got to cover yourself, but also to entertain them. What else do we need to add to make it where people would want to come? Because literally I'm sitting in my kitchen and see those windows right there behind me. So you look out that window and there's the orange grove. So we had to accept the fact that when we're open, there could be people literally in our backyard. So, we've pivoted. We not only changed the way we have people come here, but we've also taken out a third of our grove. Those trees were 9 years old, and we, at least a third, planted 50 other varieties. So when you come and you want to pick a bag of our fruit, you'll have that many varieties to choose from. And it's unique to us, so that we, no one else that we know of around here has where you can go to an orange farm and pick and pick or clip. And we have an event called a clip and sip, where you come and clip your own fruit and sip, our lemonades and juices and teas. And that's the event everybody waits for. I mean, we've got it now where people come, they make it a family event every year. So, they'll drive hours to bring their family here, have a birthday party in the grove, So we've had to totally change the way we think, which has been challenging, as far as making your mind say, we're going to be okay doing this. Because when you cut down 250 full grown trees that are producing 450 pounds of fruit a year, that's hard to swallow.
I can imagine, after all the work that went in to get those trees there and established, to make that brave decision okay, we
Yeah.
shift here, Well, you mentioned something. I always have this question about agritourism because you mentioned about all these people on your farm and now you've got families. So, thinking about the safety of having those people on the farm. I mean, could you just speak just a little bit about the things you had to think about in order to make it safe and to decrease your liability for people to come on the farm?
Well, yes. Well, first thing I did was I started thinking about, okay, I have a 4-year-old grandson. And if I take him to a farm, what are the things that I'm going to be most concerned about?
Mm-hmm.
So our bees, we put our bees on the other side of, we have a pond down at our shop where, you come in and park and then you go in and get your bag to clip into. So we put the bees far away on the other side of the pond so people wouldn't accidentally get into them. Our tractors, we have old tractors, antique type tractors that we put out for kids to climb on and people to,
Photos. Yeah.
So we had to think about all of that, what the safety of all of that. So the first thing that I really, after thinking through this, I said, I need to talk to my insurance person because they will tell me what is the best thing to, they'll ask me every question that I haven't thought about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. I just went to them and said, listen, I'm gonna have all these people on the farm. What all, and they just went through a whole list of things that I had not thought about. So, now I feel safe with safety because having gone through all of that. And I go to meetings, with other agritourism people and I ask them questions or, like if I'm thinking like putting in a corn bin, I was like, well, what are some of the things I need to think about?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, kids put corn up their nose. I had never even thought of it, or they throw it at each other. So, just little things like that you think was a fun, innocent thing and could then turn into something that's not safe.
Yeah, it could result in a EMS call or
Yeah,
something,
we're out in the country.
which is what you don't want. Yeah, and you're out in a rural area that takes them a while. Well, wow. In terms of also like health and safety, because and you might want it might help if you reflect back like when you first started. Really kind of curious as to how that impacted your own health and safety when you first, and I'm sure you were doing a lot of the work yourself, right?
Yes.
Initially. So what things, what aspects of that were things you had to think about or things you weren't expecting to occur like with your body or your health or your safety?
Gosh, there's a good list there because you just don't think about it until you're doing it yourself. But so of course the pesticide, I was not familiar with all of that. So I went through the pesticide training
Mm-hmm.
to, be an applicator myself so
Mm-hmm.
that, I would understand. And there's a whole list of things, the re-entry period and, just how you protect yourself with personal protective gear and equipment. Now, on our nursery side, we're required to do certain things to be a USDA certified nursery. So a lot of that is just requirements that we do. But one of those is spraying down with a soap that keeps canker. It's called Canker Guard soap. Well, a lot of people don't want to come, if they want to come in and see your trees, they don't want to be sprayed down with soap. So we have to tell them beforehand, hey, this is nothing but soap, but and it's a requirement. We don't have a choice. We're not asking, we're just saying this is a requirement. So a lot of people opt out not to do that. But as far as things that I had never thought about, citrus has thorns. It scratches you. It cuts you. They're poisonous, on the ends as far as they feel like poison going into your skin and all sorts of things. Yeah. Long sleeves. And I have been so good about covering my, face and skin with either sunscreen or pretty much long sleeves because of the sun and the thorns. You got to protect yourself. And it's so funny because when we pack out we ship trees and haul them by the semi loads to different nurseries. And a Mexican lime is a very thorny, no one wants to pack that tree. So every time we get a big order for that, I put on my torn up ski vest or ski jacket. It's got holes in it. It's my packing jacket and real thick gloves. And I pack them because they'll just tear you up if you don't wear something really thick. And we always joke about who in the world would want one of these lime trees because it's so thorny, but it makes these wonderful little limes. So, but I think to go back to your question, Tara, about the what do I think about for myself that I never thought about is, I am a hands-on nurseryman and citrus grower. I mean, I'm out there, and I think that's one of the things that people enjoy about working here is I'm with you. I'm out there. Now there are some days, like today is a full day of meetings and so forth, that I won't be here, but most days I'm with them. And if it's bothering me, it's bothering them, kind of thing. And so I try to think about that, like if they don't bring their gloves and I provide it to them. Do you have enough water? When we get out in the grove and it's hot, I'm thinking, you have enough water? That sort of thing. It's just, to me, it's just a matter of respect for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
just what am I doing that's bothering me? Because I'm thinking it's going to be bothering you. And a lot of times, I mean, last week we also grow, our son grows some wildlife trees, and we had a big order, so we were helping him. And it was where you could sit down and put labels on trees. And I said, would you like us, because leaning over, that hurts your back. Would you like a chair to sit on or something to roll along? No, I'm good. I'm getting on my hands and knees. And I'm thinking, well, I'd need knee pads for that, So,
Yeah.
Especially when you work with a lot of these young, limber, young people that are able to scoot around on the floor and do whatever. And it's anyway, you try to keep up with them though.
Yeah. And I'm sure trying to keep up can sometimes even put yourself at you have to come to realization, okay, I cannot do that anymore. And so how am I going to
Yeah.
fit? And I'm
Yeah.
sure the work is, like you mentioned, the work in the nursery and then the orchard. I can only imagine that the ergonomics are very different that you have to deal with as far as safety and protection between those two spaces. So as
Yes.
well.
Well, and if we work in the grove, we can't go in the nursery because that's a requirement. That's a USDA requirement. You have to have a certain amount of time in between being around other citrus. So you don't go in the nursery. Yeah. And so we're not, because we are a USDA certified nursery, we're not necessarily open to the public. Like we wouldn't open it and let just, hundreds of people go in there. Now we do give tours, but it's not where you can, touch trees and, move them around or anything like that. It's very regimented.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right about that. One day you might be working in the nursery, packing trees, bagging them, putting them in a box. The next day you're out in the grove. Everyone helped us plant trees and then put covers on them and work with the irrigation. And then on the farm also, we've added some other type trees, fruit trees and bushes. So just to kind of have a well-rounded I try to have something that three women that work with us consistently, almost full time. Some weeks more than full time, some weeks less. But so I gave them an opportunity to pick something that they would like to do. Flowers, strawberries, chickens, vegetables, onions. And so that gives them an opportunity to do something that's different while they're here. And it belongs to them, kind of thing. And I think that helps with their mental well-being. It's just, that's theirs. This is yours.
Yeah. What a beautiful idea. And it creates a sense of community and uniqueness, right, of what everybody brings to the farm. I'm glad you mentioned that about well-being. How do you take care of your own mental well-being with the stress of the farm? And has that shifted or changed over time for you?
It has. It has certainly. One of the things that I like to do is I still, well, I wouldn't call it running anymore because it's more like a jog. But but that is the one thing that helps me organize my day or just kind of get my attitude in the right perspective. And it's alone time, I don't listen to music or anything like that. I just I'm very fortunate to live on a dirt road, so we can, when I say we, me and my pups, 10-year-old pups, can go for a walk or a run and just kind of organize my day. That is the one thing that helps me more than anything.
Sounds like you use that pretty consistently too. It's kind of part of your routine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has. Now, there's been some days where, I don't get to go. Like if we have to start really, really early, then I don't get to go. And you miss it. You really miss it. It's part of you. So yeah, that's what I do that helps me mentally. If it's been a bad.
Yeah, probably your signal when you miss it, you go, okay, this really is working. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. So
absolutely.
I'm sure in the work that you do, you interact with women across all commodities, right?
Yes.
In Georgia, outside of Georgia, are there any areas regarding the health of women in ag that you think needs more attention?
I saw that you might be asking that question. I think the one thing that that women are afraid to, speak up and roll up your sleeves and get in there. And I see that kind of going away. There's generational farms where there wasn't a son. So there's a daughter now that's there and running it. We do have different needs, emotionally, mentally, and physically that you can't hide. You have to, and I know this, Tara, from working in a man's world with law enforcement, is
Great example.
Yeah. You have nothing to prove except to yourself. You don't have to be, and I tell people this all the time, just be yourself. Don't try to be someone else because that's not going to work for you. Because when you get in a stressful situation, if you're trying to be something you're not, it's not going to work. You're going to fall back on what you're used to, and just develop yourself and grow yourself, and certainly don't neglect yourself. But you don't have to prove you're one of them. You're you, and you're one of you. And I think if more women would kind of realize that, they'd feel a lot safer. But we're seeing here in Georgia, we're seeing women. I served as the president of the board of the Georgia Citrus Association for 9 years. till I finally said, listen, guys, we you probably need to change this up, you know. We have a friend of mine is the first board chair for the Georgia Agribusiness Council. And then there's going to be the first female, let's see, is it president of the board or chairman of the board for Georgia fruit and vegetable growers next year. So you're seeing women stepping into leadership roles, and you know, we are, a lot of us are mothers and we juggle a lot, but you know, we have to keep in mind, don't use that as a crutch. Use that as, you know, kind of an anchor to hold on to, and realize, you know, what you're doing is a wonderful thing. And there's fathers out there that are just as challenged with juggling things too. So
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Glad you mentioned that juggling, because we hear that from women a lot, that are in a role of producer or co-producer, but juggling the home life, the management of all the people in your family, that females oftentimes fall in sort of a caretaker role. I'm not saying that men don't do that, but it certainly has oftentimes been relegated to women and juggling that with producing. Yeah.
Yeah, we have seasons of life, don't we?
We do. I'm glad you mentioned seasons. This is because you shared that you're a grandmother and you retired and then went into this. And AgriSafe does a lot of work with the aging women farmers. What are the gifts that more mature women in agriculture bring in terms of ensuring the health and safety of agriculture?
Oh, goodness. You know, it's funny. I laugh at that because, you know, they say, be careful what you pray for, because you're not just going to get it, you're going to be taught it. I have never, ever, and you know, I told you early on, I'm not afraid to share my mistakes, and I'm also not afraid to share my weaknesses, but I'm not a very patient person. And I've prayed, Lord, give me patience, but you're not just going to be bestowed that, you're going to have to earn it. You would think that vintage women bring patience.
Oh, I love it.
But that's not necessarily true. You don't necessarily bring patience. I think we bring perspective, and maybe in an opportunity to not just be in tunnel vision, but to have a heads up approach. I certainly have come to realize that it's all going to work out. It might not be exactly how you thought it was going to be, but it's going to work out down the road. And I think if you can kind of keep that perspective and not worry about, well, this is not turning out like exactly how I thought it was going to be. And I mean, I've tried my whole life to be a perfectionist, and it's impossible to be perfect, but good is good. And so I think working with, you know, others, and if you just kind of step back and kind of use your experiences along the way to say, well, this didn't exactly go the way I thought it was going to go, but it worked out just fine and maybe even better. I think that's the one thing that women, and I use the term vintage because, you know, vintage is good.
It is. Absolutely.
It's collectible.
It's valuable.
That's right. That's right. But anyway, I think, you know, I think we offer that, you know, and I also, what for me on this farm, is, you know, I have one really young girl that is still in high school, who rides her four-wheeler. She's homeschooled. She rides her four-wheeler to work. And every day that she works part-time, is, this is an opportunity to plant a seed in this young girl's life. And for me, it's been, or anyone's life, but I mean, I have another, young woman that works with us too, is this is your opportunity to do something besides just give this person a paycheck. It's an opportunity to teach them something like, customer service. Sometimes you just get these customers that no matter what I'm just using this as an example, but no matter what, you can't make them happy kind of thing, but you just do the best you can and you don't lose your cool. And a lot of times, they'll say, well, gosh, Miss Lindy, I would just tell them to buzz off and you're not going to replace their tree, or you're not going to do this, or you're not going to do that. And I said, well, that won't work. That just won't work. You're going to have to try to work to come together with that customer. And we just had one that, just an easy example, but UPS picked up a FedEx package by mistake. And so it got lost, and the customer sees the tracking and sends me this blasting email about, you said you shipped on this day and it's not moving and what the so-and-so is going on, and just kept sending me that even on Mother's Day.
Challenging.
And I said, send me an email on Mother's Day. And I said, listen, it's Mother's Day. I'm with my son that I don't get to see very often. I'll get to it tomorrow. Just give me time. Well, and I told him he was in the military. Well, this guy was in the military. He was a veteran. So that kind of struck a common chord between us. Next day, we took care of it. We shipped him a new tree. That tree is still in, who knows where the first tree is. Maybe one day it'll show up at his doorstep. But I use that to kind of, show her that it all works out. It all works out. So those are I think, opportunities to grow somebody is what we bring, Vintage Women bring.
I love that. And I may use that at some point. If you don't, I'll borrow it from you. So how long now have you been working as a producer? This is going to frame my last question for you. How many years have you been doing this?
So we planted our grove in 16. So I would say 10, right at 10 years.
10 years. Okay, great. Well, if you could go back 10 years and give yourself health and safety advice, what would you say to Lindy?
I wrote myself a note here. And I wrote down not be afraid to think bigger, and to think, certainly think positive. I don't have any problem thinking positive, but don't be afraid to think bigger, Lindy. I started out, we were pretty small, and people said, "Oh, you can't do this. You can't you can't grow citrus in Georgia," kind of thing. And I don't think that deterred us any, but I probably would have. We started out really small in our nursery, and the people that were helping us, build it, the buildings and greenhouse and packing room and everything, said, "Oh, you're going to quickly outgrow this." And I said, "No, this will be enough for me." They were right. 2 years later, we had to expand. I think not be afraid to think bigger, something I would say to myself. And the other thing is that I would be sure to remind myself to, that I'm not superwoman, and to, mentally take care of myself too. And so that I don't get too stressed out. I think that's so important. And until I started meeting people in this field, what you do, what John McElveen, what Taylor and Marshall Sewell do, just all of you that are doing this, I think farmers are starting to think more about mental health, but previously it was kind of, if you were having an issue, well, you just need to figure out a way to deal with that kind of thing. And that's so wrong, because bottling it up is not the way to fix it. Because, anything bottled up, if it gets shaken, is going to explode. So I think that is huge. And I just so admire, everyone that's in this field now, and I didn't mention Jennifer, but she's one of the first ones that, connected me to all of you too.
Mm.
I think that's so important to take the time, what your company and what you're doing. You cannot carry this thing alone. Nothing, no matter what field. And I speak this too, Tara, because my previous field was the same way. Maybe that's why I'm attracted to doing this, is because I'm that way. But I think we have to be sure and be cautious about our own mental health,
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much for emphasizing that. With our work, when we go out, we tell producers and producer groups, your mental health is one of your greatest assets, just like your land and your equipment and your knowledge of what you do and what you produce. But your mental health is an asset, and you've got to protect it just like you do all the others. So, well, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted, I was thinking about that previous question about wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
About wisdom and vintage, what vintage producers bring or what vintage people do. I think too that you have to build a circle around yourself of people that believe in you, that support you. And it doesn't have to be full of people. It can be just a few genuine interested in you and you're interested in them. That is a must.
People in your corner.
In your corner. And I'm really, really big on mentee and mentor relationships. We have to have that. Somebody you can go to and say, what about this and what about that? And you do that in life. Why wouldn't you do that in what you're doing in your business? So, yeah.
Well, wow, this has been so. I feel so honored that I got to do this interview, because I wanted to know more about you when I was in Fort Valley, and I got my wish.
Oh, well, thank you. That's awesome.
I want to thank Lindy Savelle for this interview. She's our first one, and thank you for being willing to do this at AgriSafe. Lindy Savelle, citrus producer, nursery grower, woman farmer, mother, grandmother, employer of women, and mentor to future generations. It's really been an honor.
Well, thank you so much, Tara, and best of luck to all of what you're doing too.
And I hope our paths cross again.